You can see to the left the boot. It's basically destroyed. This has been there for since new on this Jeep. This sieving joint just basically needed to be replaced. So I decided to replace it with the high angle CV joint, which is going to allow it to travel further, since this Jeep has been lifted 4 inches. There is a lot. Oh, the angle is it's has changed. The factory angle has changed. It's incredible that it lasted. The factory CV joint lasted this long, because this it has been running for about 6 years now, with a 4 inch lift. But it's gotten to the point that without heavy off-roading, this CV joint is it sounds pretty bad. It's making it's like rubbing metal on metal. You can hear as you drive without the 4x4 being engaged. It makes a sound as if something needs to be replaced. Further down in the video, I go ahead and once I get this drive shaft, off, is and I take it apart. I go through re, the replacing the old one, taking it out, and then we can see the damaged over time of the CV joint, and then replace it with a new one. Um, there's a lot of greasing involved um, on the new one that is going to be replaced. So um, that's done coming up after this. Right now, I'm just basically, I wasn't able to just simply pull it out because over the years it's just sealed in there. So I had to use a special tool. Um, really not made for this, but it gave it a good, a nice big jolt, I guess. And it allowed me to just finish taking the rest of it, or disassembling the factory one with just basically hammering out. This is not something you want to do, but I'm replacing it, so I didn't care. So I started just getting it off any any way I can. Once I get this the cover off, what I'm trying to do is expose, yeah, exactly, expose there's a ring there that I need to take off with a special tool in order to be able to pull out the whole CV joint. And here you can see how destroyed over the years. It's incredible. It was just running this way. This is for the front axle, so it only engages with the 4x4, but it does spin, and it was making noises. This in there, the the ring that holds it in place is pulled out with this special tool. Typically, you want to see a lot of grease in there, because that prevents the whole CV joint from failing. As you can see here, over the years, it just dried out, and it's because of the angle was such that the boot that covers the elements from going in there just wasn't there anymore. So this is going to be replaced with a higher angle. See, there's absolutely no grease there. Um, so it, it's going to be replaced with the higher angle, which is going to allow for the grease and lubrication to stay in there longer, and the boot covering from the elements over time also to stay and not break, as you can see here. This is just like what's left of it. This is the original, by the way. So um, I'm gonna take it off and clean it up. Assembling the new CV joint took forever, putting the each screw in its place and trying to fit it in order to complete the assembly. So I decided to just make it a fast speed because it was too long. But in a nutshell, you want to take your time and make sure you do. You see all the red here. All that grease was placed. It took me a while to squeeze as much as I could and pack it well. Once that was done, then and the bolts are slide into place. As you can see, I spent a good amount of time cleaning around it. You want grease only in the center where the all the rotation happens. Each bolt has anti-seize, so as I'm working here, I'm being really careful not to touch the bolts or get any grease on the bolts. That way, I preserve the anti-seize. So when I go into the to install it, um, I don't have both. I don't have grease and anti-seize on the bolts, so it's nice and clean. Here I'm putting the a new ring, which is going to hold it in place um, with a special tool, and now this will just not slide out. Um, Next, I put the a safety ring on the, or just make sure that this is in place, um, so that this is not going to slide out on me. I mean, it's not going to slide out while driving. The rest of the grease, I watching the instructional videos and the manual that came with this, they suggest um, that any leftover grease just to put it in front of the lid that closes it, and that's what I'm doing here. once the lid is in place, it's good to make sure that it's properly seated. Um, I decided to use this um, pliers, I guess, to push it in and make sure it's seated properly. Um, it is difficult to see in the video, but there is just enough room for the lid to slide on and seal onto the CV joint. So I'm not pressing really hard here. I'm only using it to make sure that it's nice and flushed all around, because once I take it from here and into the um, into the Jeep, I'm not gonna be able to properly um, make sure that it's nicely tight and flushed all around. So that's what I'm doing here, basically, just like just slightly placing it into, making sure that it's nice and flushed, because this is going to eventually allow for proper torquing, um, since all the bolts will be in at the same distance. So it's a matter of just once that is done, as you can see here, I'm making sure that every bolt spins and it's all the way in, because I have limited visibility as I'm doing it um, inside, and I place it on the Jeep, as you can see here. It's very tight here, so it's nicely placed there now. Here, it's difficult to tell because it was hard to capture on the video, but here I'm torquing the high angle factory replacement CV joint, which I previously put together before sliding it onto the Jeep. As you can see here, I'm doing the torquing to 30 pounds, but the torque wrench, a smaller torque wrench, was used, by the way. It's not visible because of all the cover and the plates underneath the Jeep. But basically, that was torqued to 30 pounds. Now I'm proceeding to do the front, which I'm just gonna put in place, tight, just a bit, all the bolts, and then I'm gonna go ahead and finish it off with the torque wrench to 60 pounds. For the front CV joint, I decided not to replace it because the 4x4 is not used all the time, and it seemed to me, as I was under a close examination, it looked good, so I decided to just leave it. And so basically here I'm just reinstalling the drive shaft. I didn't work on the front one, just basically the rear one, the rear to the transfer case. So that would be the front drive shaft, the rear CV joint to the transfer case. But what you see right now is the front CV joint to the front axle, and that is factory. Incredibly, it still works perfect. It's in good shape. So I decided to leave it there. Here I'm trying to torque to 60 pounds, but both the transmission and transfer case are in neutral. So it's not allowing me to do the correct torque. I placed a vice grip on the drive shaft to prevent it from spinning as I was doing the torque of the front joint. In order to prevent the drive shaft from spinning as I'm doing the torque, I went out and put the car on parking and the transfer case on 4 high. This prevents the drive shaft from spinning and allows me to torque to 60 pounds, properly to 60 pounds. Yeah, the vice grip was just not sufficient to hold the drive shaft to prevent it from spinning. Three out of the four bolts are torqued here. A fourth one, which is not visible, required of the trans and the transfer case and transmission to be put on neutral. I went underneath the car again, spun the drive shaft just a bit, and then both transfer case and transmission put on park. Once that allowed me to torque the fourth bolt, which was not visible, properly to 60 pounds. Here I'm just verifying that I'm still on 60 pounds on the torque wrench because moving it around and as you go through the bolts and you torque, there is a lot of gripping of the tool, and I was just making sure that I didn't slide it to a different pound, um, foot pound value. It's common to replace the drive shaft and new joints with aftermarket options that claim to be stronger than the factory one. But a closer look revealed a pretty strong factory drive shaft. I'm not sure if it is because this is a Rubicon and a Dana 44, and everything seems to be pretty strong. So I decided to just to not replace and just keep the factory. It looks pretty strong to me. Replacing the worn and damaged factory CV joint with the high angle CV joint, it allows the Jeep to flex a lot more and prevents future failures. Common with 3 inches lifts, in my case, a 4 inch lift. Um, it also it prevents the drive. It prevents replacing the whole drive shaft and resorting to expensive aftermarket U joints. It's simple and it works.